Still being towards the start of a new year, it's a good time to remind ourselves of what's most important. And in Christian circles, the answer to that question is usually something like read my Bible more, pray more, do more evangelism and missions. Let's focus on those last two. That's not a bad answer. It sounds noble because it is noble. We know Christ sent us into the world to make disciples of all nations. And so if our lives are about anything, it should be about that. But if you know anything about hunting, shooting, pitching, or really anything that requires aim, you know that an error of just a few degrees stretched over a distance can take you wildly off the mark. And since the distance that we're talking about is an eternal distance, if our aim is off, our result is going to be way off. So what comes first in our Christian life together? Well, about 30 years ago, Pastor John Piper said it best. Missions is not the ultimate goal of the church. Worship is. Missions exists because worship doesn't. Worship is ultimate, not missions, because God is ultimate, not man. When this age is over and the countless millions of the redeemed fall on their faces before the throne of God, missions will be no more. From Let the Nations Be Glad. Piper is right. The modern church has treated evangelism as the end-all, be-all of Christian experience. The proof of this is the fact that far too many churches have dethroned God from their Sunday service and have enthroned the seeker. It's good to love the lost, but if your church is built around the preferences of unrepentant sinners, you'll end up, to quote the great prophet Harry Doyle, just a bit outside.
Just a bit outside.
Now, some will want to say, well, it's not just evangelism. Sure, it's also discipleship that we should be about. Well, we're getting warmer, but a disciple is an obedient follower, which begs the question, follower of what and why? Evangelism is a means to an end. So let's say your missions program goes swimmingly and you fill the whole world with Christians. Now what do we do? The answer, according to Piper, is worship. The aim of all these activities is to fill the world with worshipers, with image bearers who will reflect and revel in the glory of God for all eternity. If this answer sounds empty, perhaps it's because we've functionally reduced worship to a certain style of singing. But worship is more than singing, although it's certainly not less. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. 1 Corinthians 10:31. The entire human project oriented to God's glory is an act of worship. The whole domain of our existence, undertaken in the name of Jesus and for his sake, is what magnifies the greatness of God, which is the only thing great enough in the universe to deserve our eternal pursuit. Worship is important enough to God that he promises to flood the world with it. For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Habakkuk 2:14. And if you're tempted to think, sure, but that's about the new creation, just ask yourself, does that logic work anywhere else in life? The new world will be sinless too, but should I be any less zealous in rooting out my sin from my household, the way the Israelites used to purge their houses of leaven? See Exodus 12:15. Well, of course not. The former is a preparation for the latter. In the same way, evangelism and missions prime the pump for a planet of ceaseless praise. That great day is coming, but it won't come until the Great Commission is done and Christ has saved his elect. And believe it or not, despite the negativity we often see in the headlines, we're getting closer to that day. You might know that about 1/3 of humanity has yet to hear about Jesus, but about another third is Christian, counting to include all Christian traditions, as some would say, counting evangelistically. The question is, should we be glass 2/3 empty people or glass 1/3 full people? Perhaps a bit of both. We don't yet see the whole world worshiping the triune God. But from a bird's eye view of history, it's undeniable who's winning. Jesus of Nazareth went from 11 dejected Jews on a mountain following his execution to a millennia-old global movement spanning every continent. I can barely get my kids to make their beds in the morning. The fact is, this kind of movement doesn't happen unless that same Jesus is enthroned, which he is, directing the course of history towards that worshipful finish line. And that, it so turns out, is why he told us to pray, let your kingdom come. So if you're looking to hang your hat on a priority in life, make it the goal of worship. Pursue that, and you'll get evangelism, discipleship, and missions thrown in. Just don't put those activities on the throne. or before long, you'll end up being just a bit outside yourself. Thanks for watching. We produce this show not only to model a biblical worldview, but to move you out into the world. Be a part of God's mission. Find your role in advancing the gospel at abwe.org.